Hey, welcome today to the Faith Film Fan Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything regarding faith film fans and the such likeness thing. We're gonna do that again. I didn't like that. Hang on. Hey, welcome today to the Faith Film Fan Podcast, your one-stop shop for all the latest and greatest news about the faith films you love. Okay, so today we're talking about something different. We're not talking about a movie per se, but we're talking about a guy in a ministry. He has two films. It's a ministry called Set Shepherds, and I have Kevin Bouren online. Kevin, welcome to being here with us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Kevin and I go back a ways. I met him and his son Brady at the Christian Worldview Film Festival 3 years ago, and was giving some advice on how to do documentaries. And Brady's a young filmmaker and talented young guy, kind of working his way up. So I remember meeting you way back then. So that was great.
Yeah, it was really amazing. And we were so blessed and honored to have the opportunity to meet some incredible people. And you were one of those guys right from the start, brother, that really started speaking into my son. And probably unbeknownst to you and to me, you were actually speaking into me, because I had no idea that I would be leaving the military not too long after that, and that I would find myself in the film industry. So it's been pretty exciting journey. I love how God knows things that we don't know.
I love it. And thank you for your service
You're very
in
welcome.
the military. Thank you so much. Let's talk about that. What was your what was your military service? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I spent 30 years in uniform. I came into the Army right out of high school in 1992. I commissioned as a field artillery officer in 1997 out of West Point, and spent the first half of my career as a field artillery officer, and then switched over to human resources and finished out the second half of my career as a human resources officer, doing things like recruiting and talent maximization and personnel policy. And so it was a really exciting career. It was a fun way to spend 30 years of my life, getting to serve the nation as a family. And for me, in uniform was really a joy. And then it was at the tail end of my career where the Lord started to lay down the groundwork for my future career, unbeknownst to me, as I just mentioned. And he did that through my son. So it was a really exciting journey.
Amazing. Let's talk about Set Shepherds. So you transitioned from the military to this ministry, Set Shepherds. Tell me what Set Shepherds is.
Yeah, so Set Shepherds is a ministry designed to make sure that the spiritual atmosphere on the film set that Christian filmmakers desire to have is actually manifesting itself in reality. And if I can, I'll back up a little bit on kind of how we got there, because it was really while I was still on active duty in the United States Army when I had gone to the Lamplighter Guild. There's a ministry up in New York called Lamplighter Ministries, and they have a summer guild for the creative disciplines. And one of those disciplines is filmmaking. And my son signed up for the filmmaking track, and I escorted him out there. He was 14 years old. And the master filmmaking instructor was none other than Aaron Burns, who is one of the producers for the Kendricks and also has now directed two of his own films. And so Aaron was investing in my son that week. And at the end of the week, he said, Kevin, your son is very gifted by God, very talented in cinematography. He really has an eye for movies and for cinematography in a way I've never seen someone at that age. And I highly recommend that you cultivate this. And of course, for me as a military officer, I didn't know the first thing about film. I mean, I thought what my son was doing was pretty cool, but I didn't know it was that good. And so I said, well, what do I need to do to cultivate it? And he said, well, it's going to start with, let me invite you onto a film set that I'm working on in the fall. Well, this was 2020. So the fall, it got canceled and it got moved to the spring. And we find ourselves in April of 2021 on the set of the Kendrick Brothers movie, Lifemark. And it was while we were there that I met Stephen and Alex. And I also met with Aaron Burns and Justin Tolley and a few other faith-based filmmakers, producers. And they had me do a morning devotional for the cast and crew. And after doing that and just observing that, we spent about 4 days on set. And after observing that set, I realized, wow, this is a lot like a complex military operation. There just aren't any bullets flying around. And Stephen Kendrick and Aaron Burns both encouraged me. They said, hey, Kevin, your military experience could be invaluable on a film set if you ever decide that you want to leave the military. And they said, and also your love for the Lord is just infectious. And we love how you like to minister to people. Because I was just ministering to folks on the set after I had led that morning devotional. And so that kind of planted a seed, but I didn't really think much of it because I was planning to be in the military for a long time. Well, long story short is I found myself about 18 months later out of the military unexpectedly. And the Lord made a way through Aaron Burns. He called me up and said, "Hey, I hear that you're going to be available this fall." And I said, "Yeah, I had a really busy schedule, and now I've got a really empty schedule." And so on my first day as a retired soldier was October 1st of 2022. And I was standing in Georgia on the same square of concrete where I had given that morning devotional about 18 months before. And now I was a retired soldier, and I was the co-producer and the set chaplain for the movie Birthright Outlaw. And it was Aaron's idea to take what he had witnessed and observed on all of his experiences with the Kendrick brothers, and have that same kind of dynamic on his own set. But now he was a director. And he said, Kevin, I really love what Stephen Kendrick does on his film sets because he's a producer, but he's also just a shepherd. He just loves to shepherd the hearts of the cast and crew. And he said, and I want to have that on my set now that I'm a director. And I feel like you're the guy to do that if you're willing to wear both of those hats. And so while I was on the set of Birthright Outlaw, there was a gentleman by the name of Ed Griffinhagen who was living right across the street. And we had some of our cast and crew over there, and they were hosting us, a lot of hospitality. And Ed also served as an extra on the set. And he asked me after dinner one night, he said, "Hey, Kevin, can I talk to you for a minute?" He said, "What you're doing on this set as a co-producer to solve problems, put out fires, handle issues, deal with things that pop up, and take some of the stress off of the director and the lead producer, but also your role where you're ministering to the cast and crew." He said, "Man, I would love to do that. And I've been thinking about this, and I have this idea." And he pitched the idea of Set Shepherds to me that night. And we both just started praying about it. We thought this would be a really neat thing to have where all the faith-based film sets could have someone who wears this dual hat where they're a co-producer to, bring that executive level leadership and talent management and solving problems and putting out fires on the one hand, but then on the other hand, as a chaplain, they're ministering, leading morning devotionals, praying with people, conducting marriage counseling, just serving the body on that set and making sure that the vision of the director to have Christ's preeminence manifest itself on the set is actually happening. Because I know a lot of times directors and producers can get really busy and overwhelmed, and yet they care deeply for their people, and they want to make sure that the people are feeling valued and loved and treasured, honored and respected. And so that's what Set Shepherds is all about. It's about making that vision that the directors and producers have come to reality on set in a movie environment.
So when did Set Shepherds, and you guys had this, you and who's the guy? I'm sorry.
His name is Ed Griffinhagen.
Ed. Okay. So you and
Yep.
Ed started this together, the two of you.
We did. We co-founded it the Friday before the Christian Worldview Film Festival in 2023. So it's been about a year and a half now. And it was, we started it, and then we set up a booth at the festival in March of 2023. And that's when we officially launched Set Shepherds.
And have you done anything since then? Have you been able to do stuff together?
We have not done any projects together. So right now he's gone on several sets as a set shepherd, and then I've been on a couple as well. And so I went and served with the Kendrick brothers on the movie The Forge. They had me serve as their co-producer and as their set chaplain. And that was last summer. And of course, that's in theaters right now. And then I had an opportunity with my son. You mentioned Brady earlier. So Brady has now wanted to try his hand at being a director. He was very inspired by all of you guys. And so he wrote his own script and then directed it. And he asked me to come on as his producer, his set chaplain, and as the first assistant director. Again, that was something that Aaron Burns and Stephen Kendrick had encouraged me to try my hand at being a first assistant director with my military background. They said, "Kevin, the first AD is always the loudest guy on set, kind of corralling the troops and making sure everything's going on time. And it sounds like it'd be right down your alley." And I really enjoyed it. So we shot my son's film. It's called Ember, and it actually won runner-up for the Young Filmmakers Division last year at the Christian Worldview Film Festival. And we were super excited about that, thankful to the Lord. And that was in March of 24. And then
you're not a proud dad or anything.
Not at all.
Nah,
Oh,
just a little
I'm
bit.
so excited for him. It's
I
really neat.
bet.
And you know what, Rick,
I bet.
we are loving the opportunity to work together as a father and son. This is literally a 15-year prayer request that God answered. I'd been praying that we could serve as a family, and my whole family gets to serve on these sets together. And my son and I are now trying to launch our own business together as the Bouren Family Studios. So it's just exciting to see how God is opening those doors. But it really was just his hand of provision, meeting guys like you and interacting with the Kendrick brothers, who've just been a huge influence in both of our lives. And we're so thankful to the Lord.
So let's talk about the Forge. Let's talk about what you did on the Forge. So you had two roles. You were the set chaplain, which is part of the set shepherds role. Right. And then were you an assistant director, an associate producer? What was the title there?
No, so on that, I was co-producer and set chaplain. So the two roles I did on the Forge. In the co-producer role, what the Kendricks asked me to do is they asked if I could be available for pre-production as well. And so we came in after the festival in 2023. And on May 1st, it was kind of funny because they had identified a warehouse in Albany, Georgia, where we were going to shoot the film that was formerly a chemical plant. And it hadn't been occupied for several years. And they said, hey, Kevin, we would love for you to, as your first task, to turn this warehouse into a film studio. And you have take as much time as you need, but you got 15 days to do it. And here are the keys. And so Stephen hands me the keys and says, call me if you have any questions. And so that was my first task. Oh, and by the way, he threw on the end of that, he says, I know you can do this, Colonel, just to kind of, make sure that he set the bar really high with my military background. So so I took the keys and indeed we did get that chemical plant turned into a film studio, and that's where we shot the Forge. And so that was just one of the types of jobs that I had as a co-producer.
Okay, so let's just take that one right there. Okay. So all right. Hey, first off, they've got keys. Did they buy it? Did they rent it? They're
renting it. Yep.
They rented it for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever,
yep.
Right?
It's about a 5-month rental. Yep.
Okay, they're going to rent it for 5 months. It's empty. No one's in it. It's got all kinds of junk in it, chemicals, chemical stuff to make chemicals. He hands you the keys and says, take all the time you need as long as you can do it in 15 days. 2 weeks in a day, you're going to take a huge warehouse and turn it into a film studio. Okay. Your background is military. You don't know what film studios look like, what they are, how they're made, what they need. So talk me through how you take a chemical plant and turn it into a film studio on your own, not even knowing what in the heck you're supposed to do.
Well, first of all, I got to be very clear. It was not on my own, and it started with prayer. Brother, I knew that in a moment like this, there was no option for me other than to look to heaven and say, Lord, I'm going to need your help. And I've done that throughout my life, and God has always been there to lead, guide, and direct me, whether I was on the combat battlefield of Iraq or, at a home station in the middle of Kansas. Wherever I was, the Lord is always guiding me and directing me. So it genuinely did start with prayer. And I don't want to underemphasize that, because I think a lot of times it is easy for us to just kind of quickly move past the prayer piece and say, well, okay, so you prayed, but then what'd you really do? I really spent time in prayer and said, okay, Lord, I don't know all of the details I'm going to need to know. So I'm asking you, Father, to bring the right resources, the right people, and the right understanding and wisdom so that I know exactly what we're going to need to do. And of course, the Kendricks have a wide array of resources available to them. They've got a strong reputation in Albany, Georgia. And so they had greased the skids and made it so that I could make phone calls, reach out to certain people that were going to be able to provide things that we needed. They connected me with Lee County, is just north of Albany, Georgia. And Lee County, I worked with some of the county leadership there, and they had a lot of equipment that I was able to tap into that they donated. So when you think about the production office and needing to set up, desks and chairs and furniture, we were able to get a lot of that donated because they were just super excited to support the Kendrick Brothers project that was going to be happening right here in their hometown. And of course, a lot of that was me making phone calls to my fellow producers. So I was talking to Aaron Burns and to David Cook and to Justin Tolley and Trey Reynolds, and I'm picking these guys' brains and saying, hey, what are the things that we're going to need in this film studio so that it's got all of the right equipment, the right rooms, the right access for people who are going to need to run their departments. And so I had the whole crew list as far as who our department heads were. So I was in contact with those department heads, asking them, hey, what are your needs? How can we best serve you as you come in? And I'm on FaceTime with them. I'm showing them the space. I'm giving them an idea of where I'm thinking of putting them. And, And I will say, sorry about that.
It's okay. No problem.
Okay. And I will say this, Rick, it wasn't completely that I went in blind, because I want to remind you that before I got out of the Army, because of that experience with Aaron Burns and getting to come down to LifeMark, that actually led to 3 other projects where my son and I got to go onto film sets. And then one of them, it was our whole family here actually in Estes Park, Colorado. We shot the movie Legacy Peak. And so I got to be on set for 3 weeks, getting to see exactly what is happening on a film set, what the needs are. So I wasn't completely ignorant. I won't say that I was an expert, but I definitely had an idea of kind of what people needed. And part of the thing that Aaron and Stephen had encouraged me is they said, Kevin, really what producers do is they solve problems. And so you have been in the problem solving business for 30 years in the United States Army. You know, I've had to deploy troops overseas, take my units into austere locations. And I was the mayor of 40,000 Iraqi citizens in Baghdad, Iraq, back in 2003 at the beginning of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where I'm having to stand up a community we had to stand up a city council, community centers, schools, and restore civil services. So a lot of the things that were going to come to bear in taking a chemical plant and turning it into a film studio, I had the kind of the framework, at least in the back of my mind, of how some of these things are going to have to happen. And some of it's going to require some diplomacy. And I had been exercising a lot of diplomacy over the second half of my career. When you become a senior officer, you're doing a lot of diplomacy. So having to work with city leaders and the police chief and a lot of key influencers in that area in order to figure out how we're going to get this film studio done on a budget and in a short period of time. But, you know, that's really what the military specializes in, is doing more with less, being given limited resources, limited time, getting put under a lot of pressure, and then having to deliver results in a very effective way and a very timely manner. So I kind of felt like I had just, put on my military hat again. And I think that's why Stephen threw that colonel onto the end of his final sentence there, just to kind of remind me like, hey, this isn't new territory for you, Kevin. It might be a little bit of a different problem set, but it's going to be a lot of the same skills that you've acquired and developed over 30 years in the military.
Wow. Amazing. And yeah, I can see where you have been completely prepared for this. And I can see how God, Stephen is so good at recognizing you could do this.
That's right.
You know, he saw a little documentary I made for Russ Taff, right? He saw this small little doc that I made, and he goes, you could do this. You could do a film for us, you know? I mean, he saw it, you know, and it was like, wow. So he's so good at that, at seeing and,
Amen.
And then gifting and then releasing people into new ministries, to new things. What an amazing, amazing gift. So now you've transitioned from, you know, a military career to now being a co-producer, also a set shepherd. So that's kind of the co-producer realm, making it so they can make their film. You know,
that's right.
What do you need to make your film? I need A, B, C, and D done. And so you go get it done. Yeah. You know, you get that done. So let's talk then about the other part, the chaplain, the set chaplain part. Let's talk about that, what that looks like. Let's talk about the Forge. You even mentioned marriage counseling. I happen to know there's a married couple who play a married couple on the Forge. They're in a new film I'm working on called He Calls Me Daughter, which is kind of like a follow-up to Show Me the Father for women. And BJ and Cameron Arnett are in the film. So talk a little bit about, and so I could see where some marriage counseling might be necessary. You know, I could see that. Talk a little bit about what set shepherding in terms of pastoral, and that part of it. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Rick. And I love BJ and Cameron. They are such a joy to work with. What an amazing couple. They are just such an example for all of us. And I love their heart and their patience with one another. And so the way that this kind of manifested itself as I found myself that first day on retirement from the Army and now on active duty as a soldier in the Lord's Army, I was standing there on Birthright Outlaw, and I was trying to think about how I was going to introduce myself to all of these cast and crew members as they came in. Because, we were there a few days before everybody shows up. And I didn't get to do pre-production on that one just because I was leaving the military at that time. So I really showed up 2 days before production started. But I knew that as our team members were going to be showing up, that they were probably never going to have any appreciation for this kind of a role. And I was right, because when I would introduce myself, I would say, "Hi, my name is Kevin Bouren, and I have the honor of serving as your co-producer and as your set chaplain." And in the co-producer role, it's going to be my primary responsibility to be the first point of contact at the executive level of leadership, that if there's a problem you can't solve at the department level and it needs to be elevated, then you're going to come to me first, and we're going to see if I can help solve that problem for you all, so that we can leave the director to focus on directing the movie. And the lead producer had a lot of other responsibilities he was trying to take care of. So in my co-producer role, I could handle some of maybe it's interpersonal conflicts, maybe it's a resourcing issue, maybe it was something logistically that they needed. And so they would come to me first. We would work those things out. And most of that was transparent to the director and lead producer. And I would give them, we would have huddles regularly where we'd pray together, and I'd give them kind of an update on, hey, here are some of the things that happened. Nothing for you to do. I took care of it. It's all fine. But just to give them some awareness so they knew some of the issues that were happening on set. But then I would say in my chaplain role, as I'm introducing myself, and this is how I decided in my heart that I would share it. I said, it's my primary responsibility to make sure that you feel loved, valued, treasured, honored, and respected as the amazing man or woman that God has made you to be. And brother, I got to tell you something. I had no idea how impactful those words were going to be to every member of our cast and crew. And we had folks from all different backgrounds, people that were believers, non-believers on the set. And we had one particular cast member who was not a believer, who leaned in and he said, "I've never heard of anything like this before. And I'm not so sure what to think about it." Well, it was interesting because at the end of this shoot, we got to the very end and we had spent 3 weeks together. And he says to me, if my agent would have told me before I came onto this project that there was going to be a set chaplain, I would have shrugged my shoulders and said, "That's a waste of money. I mean, it's fine if they think that they want to do that, that's fine, but it's not necessary." He says, "But Kevin, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to demand that every future project I go on has a set chaplain, because this has been the most impactful set I've ever been on." He said, "And I can see how the role you have here creates an environment that is such a warm, inviting environment where people can grow, not just professionally, but personally." And that was a big part of it that I heard over and over, and I still do, even on the Forge. I hear over and over and over again from people that when they go on Hollywood sets, they feel like they're just being treated as you're a widget and you're here to do a job. Just do your job, shut up. Nobody cares about your family. Nobody cares about your personal life. Just show up and do your job and go home. And many of them continue to do that because they say, "Look, it pays well, but I feel like I'm treated like dirt." They said, "But when we come onto a Kendrick Brothers set or a Burns set, we just feel loved. We feel like our family matters. Our personal life matters. You guys are ministering to us. You're encouraging us. You're praying for us." And so that's where what I try to do is be what we call in the military a force multiplier. So not just an additive portion of the team, but a multiplicative effect on the team, where when someone has a personal issue, let's not fool ourselves. That personal issue they might be dealing with at home is going to impact their performance on the set. Because if it's something they can't get out of their mind, or if they had a big spat with their spouse that morning, then they're thinking about that and they're not thinking about what they need to do on the set. And so to know that they can come in, have someone minister to them, even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not pulling people away from their job and not allowing the work to get done. In fact, part of the heart that Ed and I have with Set Shepherds is we want to be an asset, not a liability. So we look around and say, when is the appropriate time to engage with a certain person? And sometimes that means we're helping carry equipment while we're ministering to them. So we're making sure that the job is still getting done, but we're also hearing their heart and understanding where they're coming from and what's burdening them that morning or that evening. So I think that's just a really significant part of what we try to bring to the table. And frankly, as you mentioned, you and I have such a high regard for Stephen Kendrick. He's been modeling that for all of their film sets,
Yes.
which is why when Aaron saw that, he says, I need a Stephen Kendrick on my sets when I'm a director.
That's what he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did that on our sets when he would come. He didn't come to all the interviews, but like for Tony Evans, he was there for that.
Right.
And,
right.
And he was providing that prayer, encouragement, guidance, direction, just setting a tone, a spiritual tone of leadership. Wonderful, wonderful.
That's right. Totally see. A couple. I was just going to mention one other thing, Rick. We did have a couple on the set that was encountering some significant decisions in their marriage, and there was a perfect time one night. Everybody was gone, and they had to stay a little bit later to prep for the next day. And I was just making my rounds. We try to be the first one there, the last one to leave. And so I'm just making my rounds, and I noticed that they were in their office. And so I popped in and started talking with them. And it just turned into this wonderful time of worship and prayer and just encouraging their hearts and just kind of hearing where they were. And I was able to just kind of speak into that situation. And they said, we never thought coming onto a movie set that our marriage would get stronger. Usually we're just trying to keep it from falling apart. But we actually feel like our marriage is getting stronger, and we just appreciate the environment that has been set here on this movie set. And so that's just something that I'm so excited to be a part of, the Lord's work on these movie sets.
Well, what's so great about that is that it's we're talking about Christian films. So not only is our content Christian, we want our content to be Christian and Christ focused and having the gospel centering in our content. But we also want to be Christian in the way we make our film.
Amen.
The way we film it, the way we treat each other, and that it's as we're going through the process of making the film, it's a spiritual growing, nurturing moment as well. What a beautiful, amazing ministry. So what's on the docket for you coming up? What are some of your hopes and plans for Set Shepherds in the future?
Yeah. So, just recently, actually last night, my son and I came back from Kansas. We were working on a project, and this is kind of, it's kind of interesting how Set Shepherds is evolving into a wide array of spaces. So my son and I were working on a project for a organization called Officers Christian Fellowship. They were recording a 1-hour training, or they wanted us to come and record a 1-hour training that they do for their membership. These are military officers all over the world, and they have this special training they do for couples to help strengthen their marriage in the military. And the couple that actually does that training is they're getting older, and we don't know how much longer we're going to have them around, but they've been doing this training for over 25 years, and it's really impacted a lot of people. So they asked us to come and record this, and I found myself, it's funny, I can't help myself but just kind of fall into a Set Shepherd role anywhere I go. So my son and I show up. It's just the two of us. He's the director. He's the director of photography. He's got me as kind of his first AD. I'm running sound. I'm also running art department, and I'm doing set decorating, and we're getting the whole thing set up, just the two of us. And I said, hey, let's commit this to the Lord. How can we pray for you? How can we minister to you as you prepare to do this presentation? And they just said, we didn't think when we hired someone to record this that it was going to be this ministry. We just kind of thought it was a film. Some film guy is going to come in, shoot it, give us a product, and we're done. But instead, we ended up spending a good part of most of the day. Actually, we spent a couple meals with them and just had some time of fellowship and prayer and singing, and we're just grateful to the Lord for those kinds of things. And so we're looking for opportunities where my son and I together can shine the light of Christ, and even our whole family. On The Forge, as you know, I was the co-producer and set chaplain, but my wife was the hospitality coordinator. So she got to love the whole cast and crew and make sure that they felt like they were valued members of the team. Our oldest daughter was the key craft services. So she was running all the, crafty snacks and drinks for the cast and crew. And then Brady was the behind the scenes cinematographer. So he was helping Paul and Kelsey Anderson with the whole BTS department and capturing the making of the movie. And then my two little ones, they're 10 and 8, they got to be extras in the movie. And they were also helping their big sister in Crafty with delivering, drinks and ice water on hot, Georgia summer days. And so they just love getting to volunteer on set and then be extras in the movie. And it really is a dream come true for our family to get to do that. So, on the horizon, I don't have any current projects that are ready to go. We do have one that we're trying to get funded. And hopefully, if that gets funded, then we'll be able to shoot that one in the spring. And that would be another opportunity to do a feature film. But we did just do a short film in South Carolina with a friend of ours. And Lord willing, that one will get to premiere at the Christian Worldview Film Festival in March of 2025. And again, it's a faith-based film based in the 10th century about how the gospel was brought to the Nordic people. And in that role, I actually got to be the first assistant director on that one. And my son was the DP. And then my wife and daughter did catering and crafty. And my little guy, he was one of the actors in the movie. And then my youngest daughter was a volunteer on the set. And then I also dual hatted as the set shepherd. And again, everyone on that crew, we had about 40 on the crew. At the end of the week, we did our wrap party, and the testimonies were just abundant in people saying, I've never felt such joy and love on a set. And actually, I got to tell you this one. We had a local actor who was playing one of the Vikings in this movie. And we were doing the morning devotional. And he came over to me and he says, hey, I just want you to know I'm a pagan and I don't share your guys' faith. I actually worship a Norse god and I'm pagan. And I said, hey, that's fine. We welcome you on the set. We just want you to feel loved and valued. And we're so grateful that you're here and that you're helping us make this film. And so he's standing off to my side as I'm doing the morning devotional. And I tied in a military thing into my devotional that morning. And unbeknownst to me, he was in the military. He was a Marine Corps, enlisted Marine Corps guy, and had worked in maintenance. And I was talking specifically about maintenance. And I mean, this is just how our Lord works, right? The message the Lord puts on my heart that morning is a military maintenance message, and how we also apply that in our spiritual life and as we maintain our soul. And I'm just sharing this stuff. And he comes over to me and says, man, Kevin, when you mentioned that, I had chills go up my spine. He says, and you've given me a lot to think about. He says, but I got to tell you something. I've never been on a movie set environment that's this loving and this friendly. He says, you guys have just welcomed me in. He says, normally when I've been on a couple other Christian sets, I've felt judged and persecuted. He said, but you guys have just been so warm and welcoming. And I just want to thank you for that. So we celebrated that at the wrap party, and just how God was moving through this entire casting crew, because most of them were believers, but we did have a handful of non-believers, and they couldn't deny their own eyes and their own experience that they were on a set where the aroma of Christ was permeating every element of it. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. So I'm excited to be in this industry. I'm excited to bring the light of Christ with my family. And it all happened because my son, when he was eight years old, started doing Lego stop motion videos, and one thing led to another. And now he's directing and DPing and having a great time being a filmmaker as a family.
Fantastic. So how can people get more information about Set Shepherds?
Just go to our website, which is www.setshepherds.com, and they'll be able to see that. Or if they go on YouTube, they can look at Bouren Family Studios, just at Bouren Family Studios, or they can look up my son and they'll see some of the projects there he's doing. And his is Brady Bouren. So at Brady Bouren on YouTube is another way. But yeah, setshepherds.com is where you'll kind of see the deal for us and how to get a hold of us. And if we can come alongside to help encourage you, pray for you, or help you set, we'd love to do that.
Well, Kevin, what a great time. Just amazing. Amen. I love your heart, love your enthusiasm. Just amazing. What a great ministry. And thank you so much for being on the Faith Film Fan Podcast today.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. God bless you, brother.